Oh, sorry, recording. Okay, now it's recording.
Yep.
So welcome everybody, and thank you for making the time tonight to be here for our Thompson Project Senior Design presentation. We're super excited to talk with you and share with you what we've learned so far this semester. So to get into it, our site is obviously it's obviously the Airline State Park Trail over in East Thompson, Connecticut, the Quiet Corner. And some concerns we've heard from visiting the site and from talking with the town is that right now there is no sense of place. It's just something on the side of the road, and you really want to honor the site and the history and make it really like you just arrived somewhere. There also are concerns surrounding safety, accessibility, more parking, and honoring the history as well. And on the left here, you can see this draft iteration, the sketch that we were provided by y'all, that it will be very helpful in guiding the designs moving forward. So as we know, this site is historic as one of the largest train wrecks in history, involving 4 large engines. As you can see here, we took these images from the workshop. So we know how important the history is to y'all and the town and the community, and we really want to build upon that and showcase that in the site and in the area, and make it easy and accessible for folks to educate themselves on what happened.
So some of the things we observed on our site visit was that the parking lot was not leveled. We don't know to what degree the slope was, but it was pretty much that it caused some issues with runoff water forming puddles at the bottom. This leads into like the deterioration of the parking lot. So like if we decide to use either gravel and sand, it will start to erode and flow down to the bottom. Or if we decide to use pavement, then it's going to form a lot of puddles at the bottom. That's one of the issues we've been thinking about after the visit. So we have to consider if we want like a flat parking lot or just like try to work with what we have so far.
So as Josh just mentioned, because of the way the site is graded, there is an unintentional kind of stormwater detention basin that's formed. As you can see in the picture, it's just this large pothole area that's been formed by what we think is the erosion of the gravel and asphalt and has been turned into a temporary stormwater collection basin on the side of the road.
When we visited the site back in October, we took a look around at the existing stormwater infrastructure, and this is the general idea of what we saw. We're seeing 3 local catch basins with unknown pipe sizes and an unknown outlet.
We've also noticed some concerns with pedestrian safety. The 2 sides of the trail are bisected by this public roadway. While there is a pedestrian crosswalk, there are currently some issues that are safety hazards and increase the difficulty and danger of trail hikers trying to cross to the other side. First, the pedestrian crosswalk is met by that stormwater-filled pothole we just discussed on one end. As I mentioned, this is currently in place due to erosion, so as the soil and gravel bed further erodes, the pothole will get larger, which means that the pedestrians using the crosswalk will be met by an even larger body of water. The roadway itself creates another issue for pedestrians. Currently, the roadway has a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, which is quite high considering how sharp the curve is from both ends of the road coming into the crosswalk. We did some research on this, which Josh will talk more about later, but essentially we found that this kind of high speed ensures that the driver has a decreased reaction time to see the crosswalk, and so a decreased time in recognizing pedestrians in the crosswalk. I looked into the City of New Haven's Complete Streets Design Manual, which suggested that on local roads, target speeds should be set at or about 20 miles per hour in order for pedestrian safety to be maximized. We would like to follow this guideline and would probably be proposing a lower speed limit for pedestrian safety, most likely the 20 miles per hour that is recommended.
Sean, are you muted?
Hi. So this is just a quick map of the land we're working with. As we've discussed, we're trying to stay on public land and not have to do with any sort of private residences. So the yellow line is a outline of the trail and the public land on either side. And then the red circle is the main site area with the parking lot and likely where the pavilion will end up being proposed. This drawing is from J&G Engineering, who has previously worked on this project. It's just a quick layout of the grading and the site, and then also kind of how they envisioned parking. And this is also a more exact layout of the parcel.
So from the public workshop that was held, we know that one of the big wish list items is to have a more organized parking area. So to mitigate flooding concerns from the runoff from the parking lot, we're thinking of implementing a swale at the boundaries of the lot. One of the really good things about this is it blends in really well with the environment, since it really is just a shallow channel in the area around the lot with lightly sloping sides. It also prevents cars from driving through any of the side grassy areas rather than going in and out through the main entrance. I noticed that in the original concept drawing that you provided to us, it included a natural foliage barrier at the end of the site. We thought this was a fantastic idea, and actually the same City of New Haven's Complete Streets Design Manual that I mentioned earlier talks about tree belt enhancements as another way to deal with stormwater runoff. So lining the streets with trees, shrubs, or just native plants can be used to both enhance the aesthetics of the site, which helps play into that charming Thompson character that I know the residents are really keen on preserving, as well as provides that needed stormwater control.
So the key elements to the park that we are focusing on, the main thing is creating a pavilion like the one seen here in Pomfret. Follow the design cues of the old train station. And along with that, some sort of restroom, either a porta potty like there is there now, or a more permanent type of structure. And then making sure that all these amenities are accessible. We're thinking we're going to push back the pavilion from the parking lot so that it's still visible, but you're not experiencing traffic noise while you're trying to enjoy it. And then another idea that was mentioned at the last meeting we had was regrading the path through this site with different colored gravel to create the image of a railroad, kind of help contribute to any sort of walking guides or just people enjoying the park. And then obviously at the last meeting, we picked, people voted on window to the past signs as the main sort of informative media to engage with this park. This is an example of one of those signs that would be on the trail.
So one of the things I looked into was pedestrian safety, and it is one of the key components we want to focus on for this project just because it is a hiking trail and we're going to have a large influx of walkers and pedestrians in the general vicinity. So our main focus is just trying to improve the crosswalk, whether by making it more accessible to pedestrians and more visible to both pedestrians and drivers. Some alternative solutions we suggested so far have been decreasing the speed limit of the general area, clearing out some brush just to give drivers and pedestrians more visibility of each other. And we also could do an implementation of a speed table so that it can force cars to slow down. With this image provided right here, you can see that as the speed of a car increases, so does the chance of a fatality of a pedestrian. And that's one of the things that we're really concerned about, since this area focuses on hikers, bikers, and other forms of pedestrian walking. Whether the person can react fast enough or not, we don't want to make that too much an issue for it. We want to improve the situation so that both the driver and pedestrian have time to react. Like I was mentioning earlier, the speed table concept we could implement would force cars to slow down instead of having a general speed limit that they need to follow. If they go too fast over this, obviously most drivers know that it can cause damage to the car, so this is what forces them to slow down.
So we understand that there needs to be more parking, and we need to kind of revamp what's there already. It's a bit of a challenge to be mindful of the abutting properties in terms of the local topography and also not make anything too steep. But something that we're proposing is a split level parking with a retaining wall in between. I do think if the retaining wall is not here, we might even need one somewhere else too, just because of the slopes. So this is a picture of Hilltop Apartments at Yukon Stores. I've lived here for the past 2 years, so I'm quite familiar with it. So pretty much there's just one level and then a retaining wall with like a landscape buffer and then another level up top. And it almost seems like there's naturally one right now. There's like a middle landscape buffer at the project site currently. And then of course we want to be mindful of ADA requirements for slope and for ramps and handicap spaces. And if possible to limit the amount of grading we do so we can limit the amount of cut and fill to what remains on site. So we don't have to truck anything in and truck anything out.
Some of the things that we mentioned earlier were the takeaways from the most recent public meeting in November. There was the pavilion concept idea, which can be implemented on the trail. The historically accurate replica of the train depot. I guess this also can lead in sort of into the girder rail replica and also the switch recreation. So we're not entirely sure like what people specifically want, but I would probably choose like one of those 3 ideas. One of the ones we probably wouldn't focus on is the girder rail replica, just because if it is implemented onto the trail, it is a potential hazard for bikers and hikers for tripping over it. The switch would probably be one of the easier ones to implement and would be more visible for safety wise, not like obviously the train depot would be a lot bigger and more visible. The concept of porta potties or restrooms so that we can either keep the idea of having a porta potty there and also increasing the numbers there, or actually if there's enough people that come into the trail, we could think about planning a restroom area. The windows to the past idea, which would definitely seem like everybody likes, so we'll probably have that as the trail markers. And then some of the things that we suggested was like the speed table in the building on the idea of the garden medium that was provided by the planners team, just to help with either both stormwater and safety of pedestrians. So here we have some questions, at least for you guys, if you feel like you would like to answer any of them. It's mostly just like the alternatives that we have for this project is like, would a preferred restroom installation or porta potties? We also have which concept for pedestrian safety do you prefer the most, trying to decrease the speed limit, introducing the speed table, or any other suggestions you might have. Which replica or interpretation of the train wreck's history would you prefer to see the most? Since I don't know if we will, but we would want to try to represent what people wanted from the meeting. And what do you guys think of the double level parking lot that was a potential idea, or do you prefer having it leveled out? And also what so far do you think is the preferred method for improving the stormwater issues? So feel free to chime in to any of these questions.
You guys can all unmute yourselves. I see you're all muted.
This is Joey Martino. I would prefer the permanent restroom installation over the porta potty. So that would be one preference on my side.
So that, of course,
Have you-
raises some other challenges, like, you know, what is the septic situation up there?
I'm
don't
more of an earth person. So there's different types that you could use that would be more suitable for that rural area.
The state may have something to say about this. Right?
That's true as well.
It's state park. Can you describe this? I don't understand the speed table, and is that the same as having speed bumps?
It is similar to having a speed bump, except it's much, the bump is spread out over a much greater distance. So it's not really like a speed bump. It's just a change in elevation so that pedestrians are physically elevated from the road. Thus they're more visible as they're crossing. it also encourages vehicles to slow down. And then a big part of it is having the garden median combined with that, which narrows down the road, and that also naturally encourages cars to slow down.
Want to show the image, Josh? I think that was a pretty good
So
representation.
it's natural enforcement of the posted speed limit.
So is it, I mean, we're coming around a curve though, so you still, there's no sight line to see that until you're on top of it?
It probably would not be that large. You could also, the median doesn't have to be curbed. The median can just be paved stone that's level with the road. So you're not creating any sort of collision chance.
No, but what I'm saying is you come around the corner, both directions, you're coming around a corner. And that isn't necessarily visible until you're on top of it.
Can have flashers, Karen.
Yeah, the implied
Okay.
solution is
All right. So,
is just to have warning signs ahead of it, you know, just like you would to a crosswalk or a school zone.
The interpretation of the train wreck site, for me, it would be photographic explanation, photographs and explanations of what actually happened on the site, plus talking as much about the train wreck as we are talking about the East Thompson train station that was there too.
Mhm.
so having these windows doesn't preclude having a QR code down at the bottom so that the people who have the phones and the technology can still get to the website.
Yep. One idea I had was combining the windows to the pass signs along with some sort of QR code sign, or a little informative sign along the bottom, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems fairly easy to accommodate for. I mean, you could have the acrylic windows, and then whatever it's held up with, the stanchions or the posts could certainly host the QR codes or the informational signs so that it doesn't disrupt the image. So in terms of the parking area and the puddling that you guys identified, it seems to me like a good solution there would be to install rain gardens as a part of those swales, to add that landscape interest. More challenging on the one that sits at one end of the crosswalk, obviously, but some kind of redirection of that stormwater into a sunken rain garden seems like a sort of an environmentally friendly solution.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because right now, the biggest puddle out of all of them sits right at the edge of that crosswalk. And we were noticing as we were there, because the edges of the lot aren't defined clearly right now, there were a couple cars that were just driving right through it, and then of course driving through the edge of the pedestrian crosswalk. So I think having some kind of, like you said, rain garden with that grassy spill would really help with that.
Are there any
And
other
does that
questions?
work out with the two? So you have a rain garden for the water, and then the 2-level parking exactly. Can you go through that again? How many cars up at the top, and how many cars, do you have an idea how that would, at that site, how that would work? And how far back then would the pavilion be if you've got an upper level of parking?
Because we haven't started sketching this like to scale yet, and really drafting the designs, I'm not sure of the exact numbers or locations of those, but we'd want to try to least have to move things around and modify the site as possible. Try to keep most things not too of a drastic change.
Can you go back to J&D's rendering of the parking area? So this is not proposed as split level, correct?
No.
No.
So I guess the question then becomes, can this be modified to or adapted to incorporate some of the leveling ideas? Or is this just already, because I don't read these things as well as some people do, is this just already designed to direct that water along those contour lines?
So it does look like the water is designed to go along those contour lines, but this is pretty close to what we saw on the site in terms of grading. So I don't think this would do too much in terms of mitigating the stormwater. It also
Okay.
keeps that grade pretty steep, which I think would be a concern for ADA spaces. So that's something that we would look to mitigate.
So what other kinds of questions do you have for us guys, Yukon guys?
I have one. Do you have a preference for completely paving the lot or using impervious or pervious pavement or keeping it gravel?
I would defer to the Trails folks on that first. Karen in particular and Paul, I think, are here from Trails.
Well, I think it's more, if it's a stormwater problem, having an impervious surface is going to exacerbate it, no?
Well, what it would do would be to direct the water into the road, and you know, it wouldn't puddle in the same way. But yeah, that water's got to go somewhere.
Well, all right, my guess, I'm just guessing, is that the state is going to have something to say about paving an area.
I don't think we would suggest paving with normal asphalt. We would suggest using porous asphalt. So either if we did that or recreating with a different gravel mix, because right now it's not really gravel, it's kind of just dirt. Either solution
Yeah.
would encourage water percolating down through the parking lot instead of flowing out towards the road. And
This is Paul. Could you put up the picture of the Pomfret site and see what they have? I guess it doesn't show the parking. They have a nice parking area over there, but I don't recall what they actually had for material. It may have been like a stone dust or something. I'm not sure if it was paved. It's something we probably could take a look at and see.
Yeah, well, we can look into that for the future. Thank you.
I believe that it's, it may not be asphalt, but it's similar to asphalt, whatever the material is that they use. It's not stone dust.
So it is some kind of pavement.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. We'll definitely give them a call and check out what that material is.
You guys can make this slideshow available to me, because what I'd like to do is forward some of your questions over to our contacts at Connecticut Deep, Lori Giannotti and Matt Quinn, to see what they do have to say about you know, some of the hypotheticals, you know, what would be allowed for sanitary facilities, how much they'd be willing to allow paved surfaces, you know, because Karen does bring up an excellent point. We know, for example, that we can't run any electricity up there. That's a thing that Matt Quinn happened to mention to me specifically months ago. Can't have any electricity up there, which I believe actually just means no running of wires. I think if there was solar generated, like a composting toilet or something like that, that I don't think that's what he was referring to. But regardless, any of those sort of infrastructural questions about making changes to the state property, we should ask those questions clearly for them.
Yeah, I believe by changing the speed limit, that would be a DOT major issue.
Right.
Well, that's a local road there. So the changing of the speed limit, I don't know, actually, but I'll ask Rich. And we get a lot of complaints about speeds in that area having nothing to do with the trail. You know, anytime somebody brings a proposal up to planning and zoning, especially anything that involves, you know, trucks going through, the complaint about the sight lines and the speeds going through there, they are persistent. So I think there would be at least some neighborhood support for reducing speeds in that area.
That's great to hear. We were honestly, when we visited, shocked at the 30 miles per hour speed limit, just because the curve coming into that crosswalk and just coming into the area in general is pretty high. So 30 is a pretty big jump for that local road.
I have had local people say things when I've been out there to me that they see near accidents all the time.
Yeah, I'll ask Rich what's involved in terms of, you know, actually changing speed limits on local roads. I don't know what the procedure is there, but I'm sure he can tell me. And like I say, I'm sure there'd be at least a reasonable amount of support for people who actually live in that area.
Are there any further questions?
I just want to bring, this is Karen again. I want to bring up, just, do we need to put in the back of our thinking that someday the state may put a bridge there? Tara, what do you think? It's too far in the future to even consider?
I think that it's not a great solution for that area. I think the cost to put one in would be high, and that the surge in usership that would have to occur in order for that to be feasible would be orders of magnitude beyond anything that we're truly anticipating. And it would probably be somewhat disruptive, you know, to the rest of the sort of visuals of the neighborhood. I mean, maybe not, but I think you'd have a lot more trouble getting the neighbors to agree to be happy about a bridge going in there than you would to have the neighbors agree to slow the speeds down and maybe have one of these speed tables or, you know, a well-marked speed bump. And I just think that's an easier pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Yeah, this is Paul. I think putting a bridge in is probably not a great idea. That's going to take away most of the parking area because they'd have to elevate all that up to the, you know, to the height of the bridge. And if you look at the original bridge, it was very narrow. They'd have to put a really long span to make that work.
Okay, I just bring it up because it's been talked about.
Yeah, I know
just in our
it's been talked about. It's been talked about a lot. I've been not bullish about that every time it's been brought up. Between cost and even if this succeeds to our wildest dreams, I just don't see it a reasonable choice.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up.
Fair enough. I mean, in terms of bridges or tunnels for the airline trail, I think we get way more mileage about pursuing a solution like that up at the 193 end, which has also been proposed, and I think that's got a lot more connectivity potential. There's no real connectivity potential except for this one for something that can be accomplished with a crosswalk, I think. you know, or a combination of crosswalks and other traffic calming measures. I think that's just the appropriate solution in something that is so rural as of a setting.
Okay, one other thing to look at. We know where the crosswalk is now, but we should look at, is that the best place? Should it be 20 feet in one direction or the other, where it would be more, you could see it better?
Yeah, could you guys go
No,
back to the
I mean, you know,
crosswalk
whether-
slide? Well, you can see why it comes across on the right where it
Right.
does. I know you guys are
I'm just
engineering
wondering for
students.
safety-
Is there practicality to angling that crosswalk more to come further down to what would be the front of the screen as we're looking at it?
Oh, you want to take this, Sean?
No, go for it.
I was gonna say that probably just the movement. We were thinking about that, but I'm not sure how well it would go, because if we want it to like still like connect to the trail, it'd have to go at a diagonal. Or like if you mean by like moving it and shifting it by closer to us, you mean like so that the other, because you were saying the right side, which I'm assuming is the end we're looking at right now, that one has a lot more visual awareness compared to the other side, and I agree with that. We were thinking about that a bit, but we weren't like thinking of implementing it, but it's something to consider. I don't know how well it would go though.
Yeah, I was thinking of the diagonal, just well, based on the way the water pattern is now. Of course, if we're putting in measures to mitigate that, that might not be such an issue anyway. But
This
I
is
don't know
Paul.
how practical a diagonal crosswalk is.
Yeah, this is Paul. Right now, that the crosswalk is basically a straight shot from one side of the trail to the other. I think if you moved it or put it diagonal or something, that people are gonna take the shortest route across, and they're gonna cross maybe not on the crosswalk to get across, rather than zigzag around to go across the crosswalk. Just my
Yeah,
2
that's a
cents.
good point, Paul.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Thank you for mentioning that.
So tell me what, so this is your end of semester sort of assessment of conditions, I guess is the best way to describe this. What is the next step in your process with this?
Yeah, so
Yeah, you can talk.
oh,
Rebecca.
sorry, thanks. Yeah, so it's our end of our first semester senior year and the end of the first semester senior design. So this semester we really spent utilizing getting to know you and what you all are looking for in the site. And now next semester we're looking at taking what we've learned and start drafting iterations of designs for you. So maybe something we can start talking about is some deadlines for maybe first draft, and then we'll have to leave time for y'all's comments, and then for us to then respond to them, and etc. to get to a point by the end of the spring semester, probably we graduated May, the beginning of May, so around then, to get something to you, a deliverable that we're all happy with and that looks like it can function too.
Also,
So Karen,
another-
Trails meets every other month, right? So your what for them would be spring semester meeting months would be
February. We
and April, right?
meet the first Monday in February and April and June, right? But we can call a special meeting if we need to.
Yeah. Another thing I was going to mention as well is due to the pandemic, it's kind of complicated things for our class lately. So like most professors have been very stressed, and just their like how they dish out the assignments lately have not been very organized. So I will try my best to let you know like if there's anything like going on, and if there's like limitations to what we can do for the time being as best as I can.
So here's a logistical question for you, Karen. Would you like to see sort of interim reports from these guys at those 2 trails meetings, or alternately, we could try to have that during the meetings that the train wreck park group, which is those alternate months. So that would be January, March, and then May. And we are also planning on, what am I trying to say here? Planning on doing a follow-up workshop in the spring. We haven't set that date yet. What makes most sense to you, Karen?
I think, well, we don't even have the whole train wreck committee here tonight, but I think that train wreck subcommittee should be the one that's meeting and saying, yeah, this meets our needs, because that brings Joe in and maybe Tom Chase, and then we have trails people that are not coming to this, but they can always come to that other meeting.
Right. So those have
So I
been
think if
the
that-
alternate
the
months from
schedule-
trails, guys.
Yeah. If that works best with the Yukon schedule, we could do either. We can, do an hour before the trails meeting or whatever works for them.
So what do you guys think
long
then,
as we have
based
enough-
on what you
long as
think
we
your
have enough-
workload's going to be?
When would that meeting in January be for the train wreck park subcommittee? Do you have a date?
We have not set one for January. That's the only one that would be up in the air. The other ones would be probably the first Monday, but the first Monday in January is the 4th, I think. And I have not talked to Elizabeth and Steph, who are our National Park Service partners, to talk about a schedule. I can probably try to do that next week, but I would say probably it's not going to be the 4th of January. It's going to be some other date within that month, but that's an outlier.
Mhm. I only bring that up because we wouldn't be going back to school until the 19th of January. So if you think that that subcommittee works better, it makes more sense, then I think March and May make sense for us as well. And if we wanted to get in, like if we could come to the trails meeting in February instead of January, that might work. So that we get 3
So
meetings.
That's
trails
fine.
in February, March and May with the subcommittee, and May might even be your final presentation, or you would want your final presentation would be closer to the end of May.
It would be probably that first Monday in May.
Okay, so that actually works out pretty well.
We're
And then we have to
graduating.
set the date for that workshop as well. What were you saying, Karen?
No, I didn't say anything else.
Oh,
I'm just writing. No, I didn't say anything.
okay. Does anybody else have anything else for anybody else?
Well, will you be able to talk to the DEP before they come back from their semester, when they get back from their semester in January? So they'll have that information
Yeah, as
about
long
the
as,
bathrooms and the pervious.
yeah, if Joshua sends me this slide deck, I'll forward it to Matt and Lori and say, look, these, these questions on the last slide are ones that came up, but we want to know what's even permitted before we follow any of these paths too far.
Yeah.
I'd like to raise one other topic, if you don't mind. This trail, this East Thompson Station train wreck, that's the left-hand side when you're looking at the image we have now. On the right-hand side, there's several other interesting elements to the trail. And it just, in terms of thinking through what goes on the right-hand side, the this, the marker, tri-state marker is up there. Maybe in the future, there'll be even more things, perhaps Native American things to see as those get released in the future. But I would just say, if we could keep that in mind as well, that this is a parking area for the right side as well as the left side.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. We actually had a chance to see some of those things. Paul very kindly took us to the other side too when we hiked in about a half mile. So we got to see some of the really cool things that you mentioned. So we'll definitely keep that in mind going forward.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's Karen again. So the design, as far as we can get, is that going to include the pavilion as a engineering drawing? Do we go that far, or we just say, here's the pavilion? Or do we actually design it to look like the train station?
So, and I
Is that
think
part of the class work?
So I don't think any of us are that familiar with architecture, and unless someone speak out and correct me if I'm
Okay.
wrong. So typically what we do is we can lay out like the dimensions of what it could be. And so you can see what it looks like on the plan.
Okay.
And then the nitty gritty architect stuff will maybe have to come somewhere else, but maybe we can, we can do research and stuff online and try to find some things of what it could look like or what company it could come from too.
Yeah, it's mostly just
Okay, I was just,
geographic
considering
stuff.
outdoor. Okay, I was just wondering about, recommended outdoor materials to use for something like that.
Yeah, we could definitely give you
Okay.
some sort of structural drawing that includes stuff like that.
There any other questions that anybody has lingering?
I'm all set.
I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
for the work.
If we're
great.
done, I can
Right.
do the
Thank you.
exit. I'd just like to say thank you for Tyra for keeping communication between us very well. Thank you for her for hosting it. Also, thank you to Paul for giving us the on-site tour, and also everybody else that has provided feedback or just suggestions, because it's really appreciated. Because the whole point of this project is to represent what basically the people of the town want.
Well, thanks,
Thank you.
guys. This is a nice intermediary step for us to get some other things done. And as soon as we get ourselves scheduled going into what would be your spring semester, I'll follow up with all that. And yeah, this is a good starting point.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, everybody. I think we can wrap. And yeah, if I don't speak to many of you, have good holidays. And for anybody who's still embroiled in the POCD process, I'll see you next week.
Have a good holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.